Shalom everyone, welcome back to another episode of After Hours. We got another great show lined up for you, coming from a frosty, cold northern England. Hopefully we've got some hot topics to warm you up with this time of year. We've got some good stuff lined up. We've got some exorcism stuff, we've got some Amish hemp farmers, we've got some satanic reproductive rights to discuss. Again, a lot to get through, a lot to condense from the weird ramblings of the four corners of this earth. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today. And let's get straight into it. Now, our first topic is something that was, I guess, has been made popular over a period of time. And it has been synonymous with some parts of the church in the public domain, and that's the realm of exorcisms. And I came across this article in the Daily Express, United States. It's the apocalyptic fears for the end of world sparked the perfect hotbed for a global rise in exorcisms. Now, obviously, we're familiar with those who are in the deliverance ministry predominantly, who deal with the casting out of demons and these situations where people are looking for a form of deliverance from oppression or possession, cleansing of homes, which I think has been in and around the public consciousness for time immemorial, but obviously has been made more popular by films, TV, and things of that nature. And this article just goes into the realms of how the number of performed exorcisms is on the rise, endangering safety over apocalyptic fears. So it's discussing the realms of things taking place in the public, which increase fear, which are pulling people towards the world of exorcism. So, we'll get into the article and just share some thoughts in and around the area. So, while belief in religion is at an all-time low in the US, nearly 60% of Americans still believe in hell and the devil. In the midst of this shifting religious landscape, exorcisms, which is the ritual of purging someone from demonic possession, have been on the rise, a boom that spans not only the United States but beyond. Andrew Chestnut, a chair of Catholic Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University, says, "No doubt there is a global exorcism boom, not just in the US but also in Latin America." Again, our Catholic friends over there are, shall we say, doing the work and have historically been doing the work of exorcism, and we'll perhaps discuss that a bit more at length. The driving force behind this surge, according to Chestnut, is Pentecostalism, a branch of Christianity emphasizing the power of the Holy Spirit, which has rapidly become the most expansive brand of Christianity worldwide since its inception in Los Angeles in 1905. Now, Pentecostals were pioneers in openly embracing exorcisms in the 70s and 80s, taking these rituals out of the shadows and even holding special exorcisms en masse on Friday nights. Feeling the pressure from this burgeoning movement, the Catholic Church responded by mainstreaming Catholic exorcisms, by training more priests to perform them, thus trying to capitalize on their demand. According to Chestnut, it's a free market of faith. If you want to compete, you have to offer the goods and services that people want, which I think this is quite an interesting dynamic to the conversation of deliverance and exorcism, because obviously if you look from a scriptural point of view, it's in there. We're instructed to go out and cast out demons. Jesus did it many times himself. So it should be a facet of what we see in the faith. However, you see this the commodifying of this gift, of this instruction in terms of almost like a business, a supply and demand, business-like transaction, which is quite strange, really. Obviously, the Catholic Church and priests have been doing this for a long time and have been synonymous with exorcisms. I just thought it was an interesting tie-in. Now, we just see there an advert for one of the latest Exorcist films. Again, this is not something I would recommend to go watch. I mean, I remember watching the original film from I think it's William Peter Blatty's original film. I think it was made in the late 70s, early 80s, and that gave me some nightmares, to say the least. But it was a movie that was so popular, and the premise being the classic archetype of a priest in the name of Jesus, casting out and wrestling with a demon, a demonic possession of a young girl. And in so many of these movies, it's a young girl or it's a female lead who's under this oppression, and you have this hero priest who comes in and performs the exorcism, and somewhat is the blueprint for the story, the archetype story of what an exorcism consists of. And there's just been a plethora of horror movies made since then under that guise. And what's interesting is that in this archetype, it would be good versus evil, God versus Jesus versus the devil, as it were. Again, that's not necessarily a biblical construct. It's a version of presenting the fight of good and evil. So we have this root of a priest casting out versus demonic or devilish entities, which is I think is fairly based. But you have in this latest incarnation of the Exorcist film, has actually gone a bit coexist, a bit ecumenical, where apparently you have different people from different faiths who are called in to exorcise or to get rid of, to cast out this demon from this child, not necessarily under the name of Jesus, but just under any faith, and they're all united together to. But again, I digress. It's just an interesting commentary on the state of this kind of interfaith movement and how it's permeated through into even the horror genres. even the horror films have become woke to a certain extent, which is obviously nothing's out of the reach of the narratives. Anyway, so Professor Deepak Sarma from Case Western Reserve University observes that the US has long been a hub for spiritualism. You can't argue that. Although the emphasis on individuality has made it the perfect hotbed for developing exorcism practices. He says many more people have moved away from institutional religion towards spirituality. That classic, like, I'm not religious, but I'm really spiritual. It's like, well, okay, yeah, fair enough. Right. Where individuals are able to pick and choose doctrines, practices, rituals, and in this case, purifying and healing endeavors from across any number of religions. This toolbox approach empowers individuals to be able to act on their own without bowing before religious institutions and hierarchies, which is it sounds good on paper to the secular progressive, but to the biblical truth of every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, and it is only by the name of Jesus are you able to cast these demons out effectively. But here we've got another mode of being able to do so. But if the US has always been a potential breeding ground for performing exorcisms, why is the boom seemingly only happening now? So as I said, it's been something that's always been familiar to the populace, but why is it on the increase? Now, Chestnut suggests that the rise in exorcisms may be linked to global anxiety about world events, with religious individuals interpreting these as potential signs of impending apocalypse. In an era marked by global challenges like the pandemic and geopolitical conflicts such as Russia and Ukraine, as well as Israel and Palestine, The belief of demonic possession and its cure provides a seemingly rational solution. So painting this picture here that the world's going to pot, and so people are turning to exorcisms, which is a bit strange. Now, this rise is cause for concern for many reasons, one being individual safety. Now, this is curious because how deliverance or exorcism can get into this realm is quite a weird question, really. But just this past year, a 4-year-old boy in North Carolina died, and his adoptive parents were accused of subjecting him to an exorcism. Additionally, in 2022, in Northern California, individuals were arrested after a 3-year-old girl died following a ceremony at a tiny Pentecostal church in San Jose. There is also growing concern about the connection between these practices and the rise of far-right ideologies. Chestnut explains that public exorcisms are being leveraged for conservative, moral, and political agendas. So we have this almost like a besmirching of what an exorcism could actually be if people are dying, if children are dying as a result, and it's connected to this practice, making that link towards how it potentially could be a dangerous thing for individuals to engage in. It's a bit strange. Now, examples include a bishop performing an exorcism on the entire city of Portland in 2020. Similarly, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone conducted an exorcism in San Francisco in 2020, claiming evil is present here after protesters toppled a statue. So you're telling me in the city of San Francisco, it takes a toppled statue for a guy to recognize that there's evil present? I'm sure there would have been many indicators prior to that. But anyway, in 2021, a Wisconsin priest also live streamed exorcisms, falsely linking them to widespread voting fraud, highlighting a troubling connection between far-right ideologies and the surge in exorcisms. Professor Deepak Sarma also underscores how exorcisms are used to treat sexual orientation or gender identity that aligns with conservative values. That's something we've touched on in previous episodes with regards to the conversion therapy and the conversion camps and the dangers and the perceptions around that. He says exorcisms are now being deployed to address or explain away non-normative, heteronormative sexual orientation, attributing it to demonic possessions, allowing families to deny the agency of their loved ones. So some interesting stuff in there. I think the premise of people turning to exorcisms, looking for a spiritual answer to some very practical problems, it is probably something that we'll see a rise of, or we have been seeing a rise of, with people coming towards a form of spirituality, but denying the power of God in the meantime. It's something that's been on the rise for a long time. But I think it really begs some really interesting questions with regards to not only just how the public perceives exorcism, but what really exorcism and deliverance pertains to in the church. So, just some thoughts on that. I think one of the questions I ask myself is what does exorcism and deliverance look like within a believer's walk? On the whole, it's said in the word that, I'll paraphrase, once you clean your house, be prepared for many more to come back once your house is empty, because if you don't fill your house with your temple, as it were, with the Holy Spirit, with things of God, be prepared for things to come back that aren't of God to cause trouble and mischief, to say the least. So, is it biblical to have like a one and done situation where you have somebody pray for you, that you go for a session of deliverance, a purification, as it were, both in your home or as a person. And for that to be sufficient, I'm not so sure. Me personally, I feel that an obedience and a genuine walk and relationship with God will be deliverance within that. Again, we're not getting into deep theological discussions with regards to the biblical application of what deliverance is and all of that. But just anecdotally, my opinion is that there is protection when you're in covenant, when you're in relationship with God, and to do your best to walk in his commandments, to walk in his ways and his statutes. You'll find in the process of sanctification, more protection, and even exposure to the demonic as a form of growth, as a form of sanctification. So this Hollywood idea that, a priest comes in, says some prayers, is sufficient enough for one to be walking safely in protection. Is that actually sufficient? And it's interesting one, because we do have a lot of specific deliverance ministries who do cast out demons, and that is basically their calling. That is what they do. Me personally, I find I've not had any personal experience with regards to dealing with, an exorcism or casting out demons in that way. But I have this, this premise or understanding that demonic oppression and maybe even possession isn't necessarily coming in the form of, some grotesque, malformed, physical, physically visible or easily physically visible thing that we can actually wrestle with. Quite often it can be a lot more insidious, a lot more subtle. It can be people's behaviors, it can be addiction patterns, it can be thoughts, feelings, emotions. We know that we are subject to the Melech, to the messengers of the spiritual realm, albeit good and bad messengers, and how we then deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So I think possession and oppression can come in some many different forms, and even if you look at it from a perspective of psychology, psychoanalysis, if you go from that premise that everything that is physical is a manifestation of what is spiritual and vice versa, it can then paint a very practical, tangible picture as to how the demonic manipulate believers and people in the world alike. So yeah, just some thoughts, and again, if there's anything in there that you feel is correct or incorrect, please let me know. Again, it's a a big subject, it's a big area. But I just thought the premise of how people are looking for exorcisms for very practical problems is an interesting area. So there we go. So can deliverance be found through another party? How crucial is obedience to the word of God in form of deliverance? Is deliverance an actual thing? You know, is it something that we're to engage with, or is it something to be instructed and discipled over a longer period of time? So just some food for thoughts as ever. Hit me up in the comments, let me know what you think. Right, our next subject. Now, if you've not watched it already, I just did a podcast with Ellie on the subject of reproductive rights. I believe is the PC term, and yeah, it was really powerful. It was a difficult show to record for different reasons, but praise Yah, we got it out, and yeah, appreciate the feedback on that one. But yeah, just to touch on that area again, this is an article that's come up within the last week or so, which again, it's just fascinating when we see biblical principles filter through into mainstream media, and how that's presented, and how that could potentially be received. So, yeah, if you've seen this is actually straight from the Satanic Temple's website, the organization founded by Anton LaVey a couple of decades ago. Now, just to preface this this subject, one thing about the Satanic Temple is that they love to present themselves as a almost a mythos-based religion, where they conform to a set of rules and guidelines based on very satanic iconography and symbolism and principles, but deny a direct veneration or worship of Satan directly. So it's almost like for me, it's like a cop-out. It's like, oh, yeah, we use all the symbolism, but we're not really... it's all about a humanistic, scientific approach to life. Again, it's an appropriation of a moral structure and then twisting it to a narrative that suits man rather than God, essentially, putting it politely. So, with that being said, we've got the Satanic Temple here, and they've recently had an article published in Cosmopolitan magazine. So the Satanic abortion clinic that's peed off pretty much everyone, and it might beat the bands anyway. So at first glance, the Satanic Temple's new telehealth venture, named after Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito Jr.'s mum, seems like a social experiment in trolling. But as Cosmo reports, the fully credentialed clinic is serving real patients and has a real chance of breaking the religious rights grip on abortion law. So in this... The Satanic Temple prefaced this: the TST, the Satanic Temple's Health's inaugural clinic, received the honor of being featured on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine's November-December issue, a publication that reaches millions worldwide. This milestone was not just a celebration of our clinic, but a powerful testament to the importance of our fight for religious reproductive rights. Again, we discussed this previously, that the premise of reproductive rights is code word, I believe, for murder, essentially, when you get down to it, and child sacrifice. But again, I refer you back to the other podcast. Our feature in Cosmopolitan is a monumental moment in our ongoing battle to protect bodily autonomy. The article brings national attention to our innovative approach to reproductive rights through our first telehealth abortion clinic, the Samuel Alito's mum's Satanic Abortion Clinic. Curious name, but there is a reason for that. And highlights our legal arguments to protect our members' religious right to practice the abortion ritual. As we continue to break barriers and challenge oppressive laws, we are grateful for platforms like Cosmopolitan that help to elevate our efforts and grow support for our future clinics. Now, why should we care about this? Why should we care about what the Satanic Temple is doing? Well, first of all, the Cosmopolitan itself is a massive publication with a readership of hundreds of thousands. It's been around for a long time, and it's essentially a handbook for a lot of women. Dare I say, it's a feminist dream world in terms of the how can I say, the veneration and the worship of feminism in its kind of career girl, sexual liberation, all of that stuff. It's all about that basically, and it's got a massive readership and has been in popular culture for a long time. The interesting element is when we get to see the marrying up of reproductive rights with a religious right to practice the abortion ritual. So this is when language starts to get very interesting, to say the least, because when we have a religious ideology or theology behind it, it then changes the nature of the foundation of the practice itself. So we have an amalgamation of what is deemed a medical, clinical procedure of a woman's reproductive rights, and now we're having this amalgamation of a religious practice or ritual attached to that, which actually raises some interesting questions on both sides, both pro-life and pro-choice, resistance on both sides. So the article itself, again, it's the production value and everything is very smart. It's very on point. And again, it's that kind of classic pentagram, horn, devil presentation of Satan, that Hollywood satanic panic vibe, which isn't conducive to the reality of how Satan comes as an angel of light. Essentially, this is very that macabre, dark type, which isn't, again, that's a different thing. But to the article itself, let's have a look. So Rose Francisco Alito gave birth on April Fool's Day 1950. Hundreds of women would die that year from botched illegal abortions in the United States, where the procedure had been widely banned for decades. But here in the Alito household in suburban New Jersey, all was grand. Rose thrilled at her new motherhood. She was a school teacher, then a principal. Her husband Sam was a teacher too, then a director in state government. Their son, named after his father, would go on to do important things someday. Rose could feel it. When she died in 2013, Samuel Alito Jr. was all grown up with a big fancy job on the US Supreme Court. It's unlikely that Rose ever considered abortion for herself. A few years before she passed away, she told reporters she opposed it. But what if her circumstances had been different? If her own life had been endangered by the pregnancy of the fetus if her own life had been endangered by the pregnancy, or if the fetus had a fatal anomaly, or if Rose simply hadn't been ready for a child. What if she'd had a choice and access to safe, legal abortion care? Nearly 75 years later, in a reproductive rights landscape that feels like it's sliding back in time, one group decided to channel this policy fantasy into a new healthcare enterprise named in her honor. So we're not going to get into the whys and wherefores of the moral conundrums facing the whys and wherefores of why people choose to do this thing, because that's a whole different thing in itself. Samuel Alito's mum's satanic abortion clinic. Does it sound like pure clickbait? Sure. But beneath the outlandish branding lies a sincere mission. The New Mexico-based telehealth practice, a legitimate medical entity run by an accredited clinical team, offers abortion care to patients within state lines. The staff prescribes abortion pills at $91 per set, a competitive price by all accounts, up until the 11th week of pregnancy, and offers 24/7 phone access to licensed medical personnel to anyone in need. Nothing out of the ordinary in terms of services that are available, but here's the kicker. It's just that they're also Satanists, members of a religious organization called the Satanic Temple. Need a minute? Not a problem. This marrying of lightning rod concept is a lot. Intentionally so. as the Satanic Temple attempts to take pervasive moral panic and flip it on its head, utilizing Satanists' reputation for defiance to expand access to urgent healthcare. And again, like most things in this world, it's presented as healthcare, as, we talked about Planned Parenthood, which is actually, in its language and description, is the opposite. It's planned killing. It's like... The Satanic Temple are very good, very slick at finding the lawyers, finding the loopholes, finding the legislation in order to do their evil bidding, essentially. Never mind that Satanists don't actually worship the devil. There are no ritual sacrifices or quests for supernatural powers at TST. In reality, Satanism is a non-theistic faith in which TST roughly 1.5 million global members view Satan more like a mascot, one depicted not as a dark omniscient deity but as a literary character, a venerable symbol of rebellion, rational inquiry, personal sovereignty and resistance against tyranny. Followers champion science, religious diversity and separation of church and state, says Chalice Blythe, an ordained minister of Satan and the group's spokesperson for reproductive rights. They're so slick with it. So slick with it. Oh, no, he's not. It's not like Satan's a real entity or being. It's not like, good and evil's an actual force. It's just we like to advocate for the rights of the individual. It's so slick and rank. Satan symbolizes activism too. Again, it's that symbology. The iconography that's used, it's we know that symbols have power and there's a source to them. It's not just some logo that's floating around in the ether that's not doing anything. Anyway, since its founding in 2013, TST has campaigned against harmful pseudoscience in mental health care settings, threatened school districts with legal action over harsh disciplinary practices like corporal punishment and solitary confinement, and launched and continues to lead a national crusade against so-called crisis pregnancy centres, which many organisations condemn as fake clinics that exist to deceive and dissuade patients from obtaining real abortion care. Well, that's a lie, because there are many crisis pregnancy centres that deal strategically in the care and assistance of those who are vulnerable and are in vulnerable situations when it comes to pregnancy. Things like the abuse of corporal punishment and solitary confinement are arguably strategies of discipline that have been abused by certain institutional powers, whether it be the military, whether it be schooling system, whether it be social care, healthcare. All of these institutions are circumspect to the abuse of these acts, and then the Satanic Temple slides in with their hotshot lawyers and they start manipulating it to assist this narrative. Real sneaky stuff. TST is also known for its guerrilla... I'm not even going to mention that because that's just not pleasant. Even with all this, Samuel Alito's mum's satanic abortion clinic marked an audacious step from abortion activism to abortion care. By TST's accounting, no other faith-based group in the US has ever launched an abortion clinic. That's the game-changing twist here. Unlike other abortion pill-by-mail providers like Hey Jane or A-Buzz, TST is a religion, meaning its patients who don't have to be Satanists themselves are participating in a religious ritual. That's a key legal distinction. TST hopes to leverage in its historic push to expand its clinic model beyond New Mexico into states where abortion is otherwise banned. Again, that's another crunch point where they're trying to push legislation into other states in America to make this a viable practice, are using a religious backdrop in order to manipulate the legalities to do so, whereas keeping it as just a straight medical practice may not give them the leverage to do it. So again, it's a smart move. And again, there's this premise where like you don't want to add fuel to the fire with these individuals by going, oh, shock horror, I can't believe they're doing this, and they sort of almost play on the reaction to it, particularly the evangelical right in America, who are like, they're looking for that reaction, when in reality the percentage of the effect that they're having overall is actually really minimal, but they've got great coverage, and it actually gives the appearance of something a lot bigger than it is. So bear that in mind when we go into this. But the premise being that this is a forerunner, this is a blueprint for what could expand in the future, and what we can expect to be more prevalent. Where are we? Okay. 7 months after the first clinic's opening and 15 months after Alito Jr. wrote the conservative majority opinion in Dobbs, the ruling that gutted America's hard-won federal abortion protections, Cosmopolitan caught up with TST organisers and clinic staff. There have been challenges, including pushback from leaders in the abortion rights movement itself, and patient turnout has been low. As of late summer, about 50 people had come through the clinic's virtual doors, but that's okay because this isn't the end game. It's only step one. As I just said, it's there's a bigger strategy at play here. Now, this is where it starts to get, if it wasn't strange enough already, this is where the reality of it starts to come to fruition. I think it's genius, says Jessica, over a hands-free while driving her kids around Albuquerque running errands. The 37-year-old mother of 3 isn't a Satanist, but as of this week, she's a fan. She's also pregnant, but not for long. A set of abortion pills is waiting for her back home thanks to speedy shipping via Samuel Alito's mum's Satanic team. Jessica and her husband don't want any more children, especially given a history of super high-risk pregnancies. Still, it's hard. It's a hard decision, she says. She's decided to terminate this pregnancy within the next day or so, starting with an oral mifepristone pill in the morning, followed by 4 misoprostol pill administered vaginally 6 hours later. She stumbled upon the clinic while Googling options for abortion medication in New Mexico. At first, while clicking through the website, Jessica found TST's vibe kind of off-putting, as she was raised Catholic but is no longer religious. Nevertheless, the price was right, and anyway, she prides herself on being open-minded. I did some more research before I reached out, she says. Like, what is this? How do they operate? Are you able to see a practitioner? You are. And Jessica was pleasantly surprised by the TST intake consult she did at home over Zoom. The experience was just very supportive, she says. I think that's the biggest thing. They really reinforce that this is your decision and your choice and that you are supported. She listened with curiosity as the nurse described the optional ceremonial aspects of the satanic abortion ritual. Now, this is where it starts to get more interesting, because this is the ritualistic element to it. First, you need a quiet space. Bring a mirror if you can. Just before taking the medication, gaze at your reflection and focus on your personhood. Home in on your intent, your responsibility to you. Take a few deep, relaxing breaths. When you're ready, read the following tenet aloud. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. Take the medication and immediately afterward recite, belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to one's beliefs. That's like pure Crowley, do as thou wilt spiel. Later, once your body expels the aborted tissue, return to your reflection. Focus again on your personhood, your power in making this decision. Complete the ritual by reciting a personal affirmation. By my body, my blood, by my will, it is done. That's some sick stuff. We always pray, your will be done, not ours. But this is literally demonic. The ritual allows for personalization. Patients can include as many loved ones as they'd like, or light candles, or even dress up. whatever makes them feel empowered. We have ministers, myself included, who are available to walk people through the process. Jessica decided to incorporate some ceremonial aspects into her solo abortion experience. Why not, she thought. The overall messaging just clicked with her. So it's a very grim premise of attaching a very macabre, dark, practice which would have been maybe done behind closed doors and would have been something that was hidden and occultic in terms of a ritualistic approach to killing a child, is now actually being popularized and diluted for the sake of making an individual feel empowered or in control of that decision. So just extremely curious. Now, the Satanic chose New Mexico for a few reasons. It has 3,300 members in the state, a robust state of potential need. New Mexico is also considered an abortion rights stronghold, lacking oppressive laws dictating gestational limits, age restrictions, waiting periods, and mandatory counseling. Here, unlike in neighboring states in Texas and Oklahoma, it's still legal for doctors and nurse practitioners to prescribe abortion pills remotely and have them mailed to patients for safe use at home. Anyone traveling to New Mexico from out of state can use a P.O. box or a friend or family member's address, even a hotel. So they're not making this difficult in order to obtain the resources. In practice, opening a virtual clinic in New Mexico is not particularly radical. When it began planning in earnest last summer, TST had just to navigate the usual administrative hurdles like checking processing boxes and figuring out how to block online trolls from clogging up the patient intake system. It was only after it ironed out its startup kinks and publicized its name that the real rebellion began. The predictable wave of fury from conservative media was instant. One Fox News columnist denounced the clinic as a sinister charade and an assault on religious freedom. Hundreds of commenters chimed in to agree. This is meant to enrage us, one wrote. For Tara Shaver, a Christian anti-choice organizer and spokesperson for a group called Abortion Free Now New Mexico, TST's clinic underscored her conviction that abortion is demonic child sacrifice. Do our leaders realize that they have this unholy alliance with Satanists, she says? I think it just serves to show the origins of abortion and the type of people that champion it. And again, it's a strange premise that there are those that are conducting these rituals, that are conducting these practices that do not know the fullness and the spiritual backdrop to what is taking place. They are living a life of in the dark, without godly values, making uninformed decisions and choices, and they're actually being swayed by some very, very dark organizations. Critics on the reproductive justice side, meanwhile, condemn TST's presence as counterproductive. So, as I mentioned at the top there are those who are pro-choice who don't want an affiliation to this, who don't want their party spoiled by having the revealing of the reality of what's at play here. The anti-abortion groups took it as proof that abortion is evil. It just played completely into their narrative and it strengthened it, says Joan Lamunion Sanford, Executive Director of the New Mexico Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. Oh, so many of these groups got really long names. Her organization represents an established network of New Mexico faith groups working to protect and expand reproductive choice. It's part of a growing national movement that has seen leaders and congregants from Jewish, Episcopalian, Unitarian, Quaker, Muslim, Buddhist, and many other faiths fighting abortion restrictions on the grounds of religious freedom. Sanford doesn't object to TST's self-proclaimed religious status or fundamental reproductive rights mission. We have no issue with that, she says. We have an issue with them using religion to be intentionally provocative and coming in here assuming they know what we need, she says. The New Mexico Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice has no plan or desire to work with TST. Blythe defends TST's provocation as a strategic tactic. At this point, we don't have the luxury of trying to make abortion seem more palatable because we tried that and now look where we are, she says. We're just going to come out with both arms swinging, completely defiant. Let's have a look. In June, 2 weeks before Alito Jr. and his fellow conservative justices killed Roe v. Wade, someone tried to burn down TST's national headquarters in Salem, Massachusetts. A doorbell cam captured the incident. Wearing a T-shirt printed with God, a man strides up to the front porch, pours out flammable liquid, and casually flicks a lighter to set the structure ablaze. He then flees the scene, leaving behind a backpack that reportedly contained a Bible and a copy of the US Constitution. Firefighters quickly extinguished the flames. No one was hurt. Police arrested a suspect who was later indicted on a felony arson count, among other charges. He pleaded not guilty, and the case is now stalled in court while he undergoes monitoring for mental competency. However it shakes out, you could say the incident offers a parable of the largest systemic forces TST may confront as it maneuvers to infiltrate even more hostile territory. I'm not one for condoning violence or destruction of other people's property, but he had a go, can't blame him. TST lawsuits aimed at expanding into Idaho and Indiana are now underway, placing the group's religious beliefs and practices in the crosshairs of judicial interpretation. The federal government has no mechanism in place for granting official religious status or protections to any group. When disputes arise, the courts decide. There's no guarantee TST will prevail in Idaho and Indiana, but there's a real possibility. And again, it just goes into the use of the Fifth Amendment and basically the loopholes within the infrastructure to pass this in other states. Let's have a look. Time will tell if it's a winning strategy. In the meantime, the existing Samuel Alito Mom's Satanic Abortion Clinic is focused on patient care and on raising funds, which comes entirely from charitable donations and merch sales. It's had to make cutbacks recently from 5 nurses to 3, with at least 2 working only part-time, and it has outsourced some on-call shifts to a more affordable third-party provider. TST's legal costs are currently hovering around $15,000 per month, and that's on top of the $12,000 monthly minimum it takes to run the clinic. Says Helian, echoing many abortion care workers in 2023, it's a constant struggle to keep our heads above water. This is reproductive freedom work on the cultural periphery. Part blessing, part curse. People underestimate us and think we're just trolling as a joke, but there's a gift to not being taken seriously, she says. It gives us a bit of David versus Goliath impact, where we're able to sneak in at the right moment and shoot with our sling. The irony is not lost using a biblical principle there. So, yeah, there we have it. That's the Satanic Temple and its affiliation to reproductive rights, so-called. Again, just to reiterate, I think that this is something that is small. It's not, it's something that's been blown up and is clickbaity and is catching the attention of right-sided news media, and rightly so. But just just another indication of the weird times that we're in. So what do you think? As in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the end? Another indication of what's taking place. Again, I advocate for all you prayer warriors out there to, however you're led, to pray into these situations and these scenarios. But again, let us know in the comments what you think. Right. So our last area was something that caught my attention this week, which a subject where I look back in my personal past and my personal history. The subject is, it's interesting to say the least. It's one of those conundrums. I think it raises some interesting questions about as Bible believing followers of Yeshua, where it leads us in terms of how we see these grey areas. But I came across this premise of Amish hemp farmers. Now, the Amish are a branch of, I guess, an offset of Christian values and beliefs. I believe they came off that sort of Anabaptist branch of Christianity. The Amish are obviously very famous for their traditional morals and standards and ways. And I just thought this was a real interesting blend. So we're going to play a video just to set the tone, and we'll get into it.
But we're still going to try it. I mean, we might be criminals. Who knows till we're done? I don't know.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. You're right. We were thinking it's a good opportunity to get more on-farm income because of the eroding milk prices. I mean, we just couldn't. The dairy cows just didn't compensate enough money anymore. I mean, actually, they took us back $4,000 a month the last 2 years we were farming.
You're on your own. You're your own boss.
This guy's accent is like unreal. I think he's awesome.
Even though if you're going to farm, you're not going to work 50 hours a week. You're going to work 70 or 80, and sometimes it's not profitable.
I was actually with a taxi driver, and she told me that we need to start raising hemp. There's so many uses for hemp, and tobacco, that only got two or three uses. So she was like, you need to raise hemp. Hemp has more money, and there's also a lot more uses to hemp. And she just said that you need to get into hemp. And she said, you be one of the pioneers, one of the trailblazers, one of the innovators. You be innovative. You go out, you reach out, and you do something. You know, you don't just stay in your own grind doing corn, tobacco, hay. Just get out and do something else. So I said, well, I could maybe try an acre, see what this is like. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Well, I just seen and heard talk about it, and then I decided not more than I'm making off of most of my land, it might be an opportunity to find something to help pay for the farm, help me get ahead with my finances a little better. The future's still unknown, but because I can't afford a couple acres isn't going to put me under of what I'm doing. But I'll just work a little harder with my tobacco in case this does not work out. But I won't. I did it last year and I'll try it again. I'm not giving up the first year or maybe not even the second year.
I have 2 married sons that are thinking about going in partners with me this summer. And we're thinking about, raising maybe 6 acres.
My son will come back on the farm as soon as he sees hemp is profitable. He's a builder now. If it's profitable, they'll come back. If it keeps going the way it is, I'm not saying, we like to keep it in the family if we can. But if it's not profitable, you're not going to make him come back and work for nothing.
I would be a hemp farmer if it's going to be profitable. That's probably which way we'll go.
I just really hope they let us go through with it, and I want to farm hemp.
Yeah, so really interesting there. The premise of we've got Amish farmers who were predominantly farming in tobacco, which obviously raises its own moral questions. But traditional Christian valued people who are farming, using the resources at their disposal to survive and earn a living. Again, if we look at the righteous implications of living a self-sustainable lifestyle, farming itself, the agricultural nature of Torah and keeping Torah, and the how many people have been coming away from mainstream living in order to live a more self-sufficient lifestyle, to assist in a more righteous way of living. I just think it's a very interesting area. And so we've got these guys that are struggling on their farms with the more traditional methods, whether it be dairy farming or tobacco. And these guys are endeavoring to profit from the world of hemp, which if you look into hemp, CBD, that whole area has some really compelling arguments in terms of the medicinal, practical, really high functioning values of the plant itself, aside from the self-medicating and using it as a way to get high and all of that stuff. There's obviously a lot of value to that. So with that being said, I came across this article in the Daily Mail. They got exclusive rights to not the same farm as we just saw, but a hemp farm. Where was it? Pennsylvania. Inside the booming business of Amish cannabis farmers in Pennsylvania, where a green revolution is underway. Growers hope to sell 3 million worth of crops to mega firms in California and the Midwest by 2025. So with the advent of the changing of law and legislation, particularly in the United States, with regards to the cultivation and the selling and even the use of marijuana, we have one of those very nuanced arguments of when state or law in a country actually contradicts the Torah, and how people can start using the law of the land as a way to justify indulging in things and practices that aren't necessarily illegal by the standard of the country or state, but is in contradiction to the word of God. So we have this weird grey area where people justify certain vices because it's okay with the local governments. And with that being said, I know there are those individuals in the body of Christ who will use biblical arguments for the use for the how can I say the recreational use of marijuana in their life. And again, this isn't about, I'm not here to judge or condemn. That's between the individual and Yah, essentially. Everybody has their own convictions and whatnot. But what was I saying? Yeah, people can use, I know that there are those that cite the, I don't know the exact chapter and verse, but it talks of the cannabosum that was used, the tincture that was made up by Moses. Some advocate that there was an element of marijuana. That basically, that's one of the viewpoints of justification. Anyway, that's a different side note. We're looking more about the producing and the financial gain off the plant itself. So Daily Mail gained exclusive behind-the-scenes access to a network of Amish cannabis farms in Lancaster County where a green revolution is underway. Farmers are seeking to capitalize on the newly legalized market of hemp cultivation, which feeds a CBD industry expected to be worth $16 billion by 2025. Now, that's crazy. If you'd have told, like, 25-year-old me that there would be this CBD revolution in which you can ascertain as much marijuana as you want legally, I would have been all over that. But obviously times have changed, praise Yah, that's no longer the case. One savvy Amish businessman is trying to pool their resources for medicinal purposes, but he admits not all within the community are being responsible. So this is going to be the main insight into what we're looking at today is where is the moral conduct in terms of those that are trying to sustain themselves, make a living righteously, but may fall foul of practices that aren't necessarily in keeping with Torah. Not that these guys are necessarily Torah keepers itself explicitly. Anyway, the Amish media shy and tend to shun publicity, extolling instead the virtues of modesty and humility. At their request, dailymail.com has agreed to use only the last names to obscure their faces from any photos. So, two Amish men dive into a deep sack of cannabis, scooping out handfuls of emerald buds before smelling them intensely. Trigger warning for anyone who does struggle with this still as a believer. Sorry, I don't mean to make light of it, but you may find this triggering because there's language and images that could well be, I don't know, seductive for you. Let's just say that. It's not a scene you'd ever thought you'd see, but in the beating heart of Amish country, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a green revolution is underway. This week, dailymail.com has granted exclusive behind-the-scenes access to a network of farms where Amish growers expect to sell 3 million of their product to big buyers across the US by 2025. It's part of a nationwide trend in which the Amish, who once relied heavily on tobacco crops, are pivoting to more profitable cannabis cultivation, feeling a newly legalized CBD market forecast to be worth $16 billion, as I said previously. So when I first came across this, I was just like, Amish people growing weed, that's mad. Here we go, we've got a couple of images. Lancaster County Cannabis sells a range of hemp derivative products. Let's have a look at the video.
On it, when it runs through there, it cuts those leaves off. So those little leaves there.
Madness. Nowhere is this unlikely marriage more pronounced than Lancaster County, home to the oldest and largest Amish community in the US, numbering around 30,000. But those who gave rare interviews to Daily Mail say cannabis cultivation is a natural fit for the Amish tradition of organic farming that bans the use of chemicals or industrial machinery. They are convinced by its medicinal qualities but draw the line at recreational use. Yet the community has already been embroiled in controversy after one operation was forced to shut down following an internal backlash against the marketing of its products to get high. Welcome to the improbable world of the Amish cannabis kingpins. So a father of three is the brains behind the operation. Born in neighbouring Chester County, is a craftsman by trade, having started out making sheds before working 6 years in a hardware store. He started Lancaster County Cannabis in 2020 from his basement, putting the odd pound of cannabis into a jar and taking it to small CBD and smoke shops. 4 years on, he is looking at lucrative contracts with processors in California and the Midwest. Real, which is the name, dressed in traditional Amish attire, sits behind a wooden desk at the back of his store, which sells a range of homemade CBD products, including lollipops, vapes, and bath bombs. Jars of pre-rolled Hawaiian haze CBD cigarettes sell around for $100 a pop, but customers can also choose from a range of strains, including Critical G, Suva Haze, and Merlot. One item displayed prominently at the checkout counter is emblazoned with that well-known Amish phrase, "Roll me a blunt and tell me I'm pretty." It's like, I'm from what I understand, they're selling it from a recreational point of view. Some lollipops and some cigarettes, and I guess that's like the proper stuff. Rail shares the premises with a non-Amish antique shop and has access to a landline, electricity and the internet, while Lancaster County Cannabis itself boasts a polished website displaying its wares. He explains that over the past decade or so, the Amish have relaxed the rules so that certain modern amenities are allowed in a workplace so that livings can still be made in the 21st century. Which is a bit confusing because they're famous for not using electricity, for using every like hand-powered stuff and whatnot, and it's like, oh no, we don't want to use electricity, but we're happy to sell weed. That doesn't quite add up. He has an entrepreneurial mind and speaks enthusiastically about sales figures and future growth. He claims to have shifted up to 50,000 pounds of cannabis this year, generating around 500 grand in sales. Next year, he hopes to hit the million mark, with that trebling to 3 million in 2025. This year, we moved more product than we ever did. We started very small, but every year we're making connections. If these contracts go through, we could do a tremendous amount. It has all been made possible by a 2018 Farm Bill, which legalized the cultivation of hemp and derived products, including CBD. Hemp is defined as a cannabis plant that contains 0.3% or less THC, the psychoactive compound responsible for the mind-altering effects of marijuana, which is defined as a cannabis plant that contains more than 0.3% THC. So yeah, you have a non-psychoactive compound within the plant which has medicinal healing properties that has no effect, that you remain sober-minded. It doesn't have any influence on your facets, but it can have a really positive effect on certain afflictions and ailments. Farmers across the country have sought to capitalise on this new source of revenue, and the Amish, steeped in agricultural tradition, have been no different. Initially, however, their efforts were disjointed. Farmers would harvest their crops, but without a ready stream of buyers. But they spotted an opportunity to position Lancaster County Cannabis as a central depot for their produce, describing his business as a gateway to locally grown Amish hemp. He now works with a group of 20 cultivators to purchase their crops and provide a one-stop shop for outside buyers. So they're getting organised with it, by the sounds of it. And it goes on, and I think what I wanted to sort of question or ask is not so much the legitimacy of their operation, because it's one of those where, are they encouraging? Is there for them to take place in a market that is encouraging people to use drugs, essentially, like is not a good thing. But is there scope for them to actually produce this plant and to make a profit and make a living from a product that doesn't cause harm or doesn't get people stoned, essentially? Is that legitimate? Or is it something that will just be completely appropriated and used for more dodgy means, basically? Now, the question that I'm kind of more interested, aside from the fact that it's like, wow, Amish are getting organised with the hemp, and that blows your head off within itself. But what I'd like to ask is the element of as Bible believing Christians, where do we stand with the medicinal properties of the plant and its use? Now, just speaking candidly, if I could have found a way to justify following Christ and continuing a recreational habit of marijuana, I would have found it and I would have justified it, because personally speaking, it was the biggest idol in my life. It was literally an idol in my life. It was everything to me, and it was, praise God, it was single-handedly the biggest piece of deliverance in my life. One of the biggest witnesses to those around me that saw me come away from that area. And I'm so very grateful that I can look at these subjects and talk about it, and I'm genuinely not affected or attracted by it. It's truly like a miracle in my life that I feel no attraction towards this. However, I can't deny the healing properties within the plant itself. And this is the crux of the question. Now, a bit like when somebody is poorly or sick or ill, and we all know about the roots of pharmakeia, the ties to witchcraft. You've also got the wider context of almost, I believe it's the Jehovah Witnesses or the Mormons who don't have blood transfusions. They won't go through certain medical procedures because of their belief and not taking part in it. The question I'm asking is, like, is it a weakening of one's faith to use one of these products, one of these medicinal products, to appease disease or affliction? Are we lacking faith to not receive that healing in prayer, to be delivered of certain things? It's a deep question, I understand, because it can really touch on some very sensitive areas with regards to family members and our own experiences of affliction, discomfort, disease, and how that plays a role in our faith walk. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, because I know there is a lot of conjecture with regards to, if I have a headache, shall I take a paracetamol, ibuprofen? If I do have arthritic pain, is it okay for me to take a CBD that is non-psychoactive but does alleviate the pain? Or am I displaying a lack of faith in that? Or is that ability to heal using certain compounds and combination and tinctures, is that using the spirit of knowledge? Am I using the leaves of the trees for the healing of the nations? And I know it's applicable from a scriptural perspective, but are there God-given healing properties that we could utilize, but has been tainted by a modern incantation of witchcraft and pharmakeia, which essentially all drug use is sorcery. It's witchcraft, and it's an abomination unto the Lord. So I want to be very specific about that. That's absolutely fine. I'm not trying to advocate, or it's just that deeper question of where do we draw the line with the use of certain properties in our afflictions and difficulties. So yeah, that's Amish Amish weed farmers. So again, please feel free to hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think. That's about it for today, actually. So again, a bit of a strange blend, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, feel free to reach out, contact us. I appreciate the time that you spent to be here. And Yah willing, we'll see you again in the future. So from our house to yours, shalom, God bless. We love you lots. Take care, stay safe, and see you soon.